Morning, everybody.
Shirley's in there.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I have a thing over here. Thanks.
Okay, we ready, Les? You ready, Les?
I believe we are, Mr. President.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead then, Ryan, if you don't mind. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call this virtual board meeting regarding the master plan for cross levee fences. I don't know what that is. The cross levee fences within maintenance
just one
area.
moment. Ryan, could we have everyone else's mics muted while Bill is speaking, please, just to eliminate the background noise? Thanks.
Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is a virtual meeting regarding the master plan cross fences within the maintenance area 9 and encroachments within the footprint for the American River Commons Features projects. To order, for the record, my name is Bill Edgar. I'm the president of the Central Valley Flood Protection Board. This thing keeps going down for some reason. And on behalf of the board, I'd like to welcome you and thank you for logging in this morning. We appreciate your taking the time from your busy schedules to be with us today. This teleconference constitutes the board's workshop meeting for the month of October 2020. For those who have read the agenda already, you will notice that the staff has put together a rather extensive list of instructions, which are part of the printed agenda for the meeting. We've gone over these before, so I'm not going to do that again, but suffice to say, if you're having a problem logging in, we do have instructions on there, or you may text either Ryan Jones, who is our board clerk, or Leslie Gallagher, our executive officer, and they'd be happy to help you. Now, with regard to the meeting process itself, I think the way we've run these meetings before, it's been fairly good and efficient. Therefore, I'd like to proceed as we have previously, and that is, as before, Ryan Jones, our board clerk, will be moderating these proceedings from a technical point of view, and will operate the slides for today's presenters. He, as well as Leslie and Michael Wright, our chief engineer, and other staff, will field comments and questions addressed to the presenters, either from texts or emails that they receive from you, or you can raise your hand through the chat function on the platform if you feel comfortable doing that. Second, you will notice that there are 5 substantive items on the agenda this morning, items 4 through 8, which constitutes the presentation for today's workshop. Rather than opening the meeting for questions following each item 4 through 8, I've asked the staff to present the entire presentation first, so that we'll not be distracted by answering questions that would be addressed later in the staff presentation. The staff presentation is going to take about 30 to 45 minutes. After the entire staff presentation, I will ask for questions and comments from the board. And then once the board is finished, we'll unmute the public speakers, and Leslie and the staff will try to identify those who have been requested to speak. I will then call upon the speakers on a first come, first served basis, but Leslie and Ryan, if you can, I'd ask that you call out the elected officials and state agency representatives and officials from the local agencies like SAFECA first, if you can, and then the general public after that. After we've completed the public testimony, I'll bring the matter back to the board for more comments, questions, discussion, and suggestions. We're not anticipating any final action today. Our purpose is only to provide direction to the staff for their formal recommendations, which will be presented to the board at a regular board meeting later. I should also say that we're not actually going to discuss, or it's not before the board today or in the future of the construction project itself. The project is a much needed public safety project. We've supported this construction project before many times, and it's not the intent of these discussions to postpone the start of the actual construction project. As a matter of fact, my understanding is that Leslie will be signing the appropriate documents to assure the Corps of Engineers that the LERDs, the lands, easements, rights-of-way, relocation, and disposal borrow sites are available to proceed with the project at the present time, based upon our analysis of the easements that we have on the property. This is the third time we've worked on these levees. And hopefully this construction project will work this time. Hopefully we'll get it right. We're discussing today what actually happens after construction is completed. What we do after the construction is completed. So you should be aware that this meeting is being recorded and will be housed on our website, as most of our streaming video has been for all our meetings. We'll be taking a break probably after the staff presentation, and then approximately every hour we need to take a break from then on. The break will be for about 15 minutes, and the reporter as well as the staff give them a chance to catch up and relax. Ryan, our board clerk, will place a sign on the screen indicating that that we're on a short break and the estimated time that we'll be returning. Finally, as I said before, the staff will be trying to get a sense of where the board is regarding this matter in order that their subsequent report can be responsive to the board comments. So under item 1, introductions and announcements, Leslie, do you have any other introductions and announcements that you want to make at this time?
Not at this time, Mr. President.
Okay. We'll proceed to item 2 then. Ryan, if you don't mind, please call the roll to determine whether or not the board has a quorum for this meeting, please.
Board Member Griego.
Here.
Board Member Johnson. Board Member Johnson, you're unmuted.
Oh, Ryan, he said he's frozen.
Okay. Board Member Ramirez,
Here.
Board Member Valines,
Here.
Board Member Countryman,
Present.
Vice President Dolan,
I'm here.
President Edgar.
I'm here. Thank you, Ryan. Members, were on item 3, public comments not on the agenda. If there's anyone in the audience that has any comments regarding items not on the agenda, please send a text or an email to Ryan or Leslie, and we'll try to get to you. Ryan or Leslie, you see any at this point?
Nothing here, Mr. President.
I see no comments, but I just wanted to make a quick technical note because we have many people calling in from phones that maybe normally don't attend our meetings. And to mute yourself, you're going to press *6, and to unmute yourself, you'll press *6 as well. That's all.
Thank you, Ryan.
And Mr. President, I do believe that Board Member Johnson is with us now.
Okay, thank you. Okay, item.
Yes, I'm back. Sorry about that. I'm having some technical difficulties.
Okay. We'll mark you present for the meeting, Brian. Members, were on items 4 through 8, which are the substantive items that the staff will present for the meeting today. As I said, we want to go through all the items 4 through 8 first, and then we'll take questions from the board and questions from the public before our discussion. As I stated, I'm going to turn this meeting over to Leslie Gallagher, our executive officer, who will lead the staff presentation covering these items. And the presentation, as I say, will take about 30 to 45 minutes. Afterwards, we'll take a break and then get to the questions and clarifications. So Leslie, I'll turn it over to you, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, everyone. Brian, if we could get the slides up on the screen, please. We do have a PowerPoint presentation that goes along with our agenda today. Thank you. If I could have slide 1. I just want to go over, before we get started, to make sure everyone knows the purpose and intended outcome of today's workshop. We are here to talk about a policy in the form of a master plan that was adopted by this body when it was still the Reclamation Board 24 years ago in 1996. I want to thank the board and stakeholders with us today to talk about this important topic. I know none of the board members or staff were here back then, but it's an issue that has resurfaced recently, so it's appropriate to bring it forward now. Could you go to the next slide, please, Ryan? As a preliminary matter, I do want to acknowledge that all of the cross-levee fences in this area today do have valid permits that were issued pursuant to the policy existing at the time. Today's discussion is to determine if the 1996 plan remains in alignment with current state goals and policies as stated in Board Resolution 2018-06, the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan, and the Governor's Water Resiliency Portfolio. I would ask that you also keep in mind that any change to the board policy that would permanently remove the fences does not automatically allow public access over private property. The board's easement exists for flood control purposes, and any additional access easements would need to be separately negotiated with the board and with the landowners. Finally, I want everyone to understand that we are not seeking action on any particular permit. If anyone online today does have a question about their own existing permit, please contact staff after this workshop. We are happy to talk to you about your particular issues. We are asking the board today, though, to review an existing board policy and to discuss it with staff and the community, and to see if the 1996 plan remains in alignment with current state goals and policies. Next slide, please. So at the end of the day today, staff is prepared to document the comments received. Can we go to the next slide, please, Ryan? At the end of the day, staff is prepared to document the comments received, receive any board direction to amend or modify that 1996 plan, and bring it back at a future board meeting for action. And Mr. President, I would now like to turn over the presentation to the U.S. Army Corps for a brief presentation on the ARCF 2016 project construction schedule for 2021. Nicole?
Good morning, President Edgar and members of the board. I'd first like to thank you for this opportunity to present the project and for your support and partnership in this very important flood risk reduction project. Next slide, please. I wanted to give a real overview of the greater project called American River Common Features 2016. This project includes up to 13 miles of seepage and stability levee improvements. That includes up to 9 miles along the east side of the Sacramento River and up to 4 miles in what we like to call north area streams, which is in that top right corner. It also includes up to 6 miles of levee raise. That's 1 mile on the east side of the Sacramento River and up to 5 miles in that north area streams area. It includes up to 21 miles of bank protection. That is up to 10 miles on the east side of the Sacramento River and up to 11 miles on both sides of the lower American River. And it includes approximately doubling the size of the Sacramento Weir and bypass. I like to say what makes this project super special is that we were fully funded up front through the Budget Bipartisan Act of 2018. And what that really tells us is on a national platform, it was determined that this was such a great risk that it was worth investment on the federal government's behalf of $1.5 billion proactively to reduce that risk. With that came an aggressive scheduled target completion of January 2024. I'd like to highlight the things that we've already accomplished in partnership with our non-federal sponsors. We've completed the seepage and stability levee improvements in the north area streams area, and we are currently under construction for 3 miles of seepage and stability levee improvements on the east side of the Sacramento River, which is wrapping up as we speak. We have also awarded the bypass portion, or the vast majority of that bypass portion, with the lower Elkhorn Basin Levee Setback Project through the Department of Water Resources. Needless to say, it's a lot of work to be accomplished in a very short amount of time. Specifically for 2021 construction, we call this contract SREL Contract 2, Sacramento River East Levee Contract 2. It includes up to 1.8 miles of levee improvements to address seepage and stability. That's approximately half a mile in the very north end of jet grout improvements. And then in the lower end, there's a traditional cutoff wall and deep mix method cutoff walls. The solicitation for this project is scheduled currently for 30 October, and the bid due date, if solicited on that date, would be 4 December. Our targeted contract award is on January 11th. Next slide, please. Here's a summary in pictures of what we're actually going to be accomplishing. So what this really looks like when it gets awarded is that as from January until the flood season ends, which is in mid-April, there's a process of submittals that will come to the Corps. There are hundreds of submittals that will be processed during that time. Then there will be mobilization, and following mobilization, there will be the levee degrade in order to create a working platform for the contractor and to reduce the risk of anything slurry escaping along the side of the levee. That will be up to 1/2 of the levee, or from approximately 6 to 8 feet from the top of the levee will be degraded. That's to create that working platform of approximately 35 to 45 feet wide. And then the next step will be to install cutoff walls. Those cutoff walls range in depth from 40 feet to approximately 125. After the cutoff walls are installed, the process of rebuilding the levee will take place, and then demobilization off of the site prior to the next flood season in November. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Andrea Buckley. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
As I said, I'm Andrea Buckley. I'm Chief of the Environmental Services and Land Management Branch for the board. I'm going to briefly touch on the lands, easements, right-of-way, relocation and disposal areas, or LERDs as it's known, as part of the American River Common Features 2016 project that you just heard about from Ms. May. The certification of the LERDs by the board provides the Corps the necessary land use assurances for unrestricted use, including ingress and egress, construction of any and all levee improvements, and the right to remove encroachments within the American River Common Features 2016 project construction footprint. The certification of LURDs by the board is a core requirement prior to initiating construction activities. And as you heard previously from President Edgar in the introduction, staff has the appropriate right-of-way and easements to build, construct, reconstruct, and repair and forever maintain the east levee of the Sacramento River. I also have Patrick Nolan, Associate Right-of-Way Agent for DWR within the board's acquisition unit, available to answer any questions. He's the agent preparing the state certification package to the Corps for the Contract 2 project, and that certification is due later this month. Next slide, Ryan.
Mr. President, we're turning it over to Ruth Darling now, who's going to take the next section.
Good morning. My name is Ruth Darling. I'm a program manager with the Central Valley Flood Protection Board. And today I'm going to provide an overview of the guidance documents that have been implemented since the 1996 plan that was mentioned earlier by Executive Officer Gallagher. Ryan, can you advance the slide, please? Thank you. So first, Board Resolution 2018-06. In 2017, the board adopted the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan through Resolution of Adoption 2017-10. The board identified funding and operation and maintenance of the State Plan of Flood Control as a high priority. This resulted in adoption of Resolution 2018-06, titled Acceptable Operation and Maintenance of the State Plan of Flood Control. Resolution 2018-06 stated multiple findings, in particular that the state is committed to working with maintaining agencies to correct operation and maintenance deficiencies. In addition, the 2017 Central Valley Flood Protection Plan update that was adopted in 2017 was developed in accordance with the requirements of the Central Valley Flood Protection Act of 2008 and is codified in Water Code and California Water Code. The Central Valley Flood Protection Plan is a strategic long-range plan that addresses flood risk management within the Central Valley. The CVFPB has guided California's flood risk management investments to increase critical flood protection, improve emergency preparedness and response capabilities, and address maintenance deficiencies in the flood system. While flood risk management is the primary goal of the CVFPB, the following supporting goals were also identified: improve operation and maintenance, promote ecosystem functions, improve institutional support, and promote multi-benefit projects. The CVFPB identifies the state system-wide investment approach that includes 200-year level of protection for urban and urbanizing areas. Recognizing that the CVFPB investments are prioritized based on flood risk and life safety, the American River Common Features 2016 project is consistent with the SSIA approach identified in the CVFPB. The plan also emphasizes the importance of investing in long-term multi-benefit actions, as there are societal and regulatory needs associated with effective management of Central Valley rivers and floodplains for multiple purposes. The goals of the CVFPB contribute to broader societal values by protecting life, property, and habitat in the Central Valley, properly maintaining facilities taxpayers have invested in, and by developing multi-benefit actions that create opportunities for enriching experiences. However, planning for multi-benefit actions in urban areas is challenging, given the reduced space that limits landscape scale efforts, often what multi-benefit projects require. In addition, the Newsom administration's water resiliency portfolio that was released in 2020 is the state's guiding document for addressing the climate change impacts, including more extreme droughts and floods, rising temperatures, and overdraft groundwater basins, as well as aging infrastructure. To help address solutions to these growing threats, the water resiliency portfolio is organized into 4 goals. The 4th goal category, be prepared, states that each region must prepare for new threats, including flashier floods, deeper droughts, and hotter temperatures. State guidance will enable the preparation, protective actions, and adaptive management to weather these stresses. The Central Valley Flood Protection Plan addresses the Water Resiliency Portfolio Goal 4. The Water Resiliency Portfolio also proposes several actions to support resiliency in California. The CVFPB is specifically addressed in Action 25, titled Help Regions Prepare for New Flood Patterns. Specifically, Action 25.1 states, support implementation of the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan and its state system-wide investment approach to protect urban areas, small communities, and rural areas, improve operation and maintenance of the flood system, better coordinate reservoir operations, improve flood emergency response systems, and integrate natural systems into flood risk reduction projects. Investments in flood management in recent decades have reduced risks to life and property in the state. And while flood protection has traditionally relied on strengthening and maintaining levees, it is identified that this work is critical and must continue, especially in urban areas and small communities. The Water Resiliency Portfolio recognizes that California's water systems are challenged with aging, damaged, or increasingly risk-prone infrastructure, and flood risk systems require regular maintenance. The maintainer's ability to access flood facilities for routine maintenance activities and during high water or flood events is essential. The Water Resiliency Portfolio also identifies the need for multi-benefit approaches to implement resiliency goals and consider project features that align with the state's goals of providing broader societal values and multi-benefits is also a priority. And that's all. Thank you.
We would now turn it over to our board counsel, Jeet Dua.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. I'm having technical issues with my laptop, so I have to call in to get audio. I don't know if it was still on mute, but good morning, Mr. President, Vice President Dolan, and members of the board and the public. Again, I'm Jeet Dua, board counsel, and I just wanted to take this time to address some of the board's authorities with respect to the encroachment removal process and the board's authorities to do so. Ryan, if you wouldn't mind advancing the slide, please. So the board's authorities with removing encroachments stem from the Water Code, the board's regulations found in Title 23, Division 1, and also in board-issued encroachment permits. As we've already heard, the board has the necessary land rights to certify construction of the project. If you wouldn't, so I'm not going to go back over those. Ryan, could you advance the slide first, please? So Section 8534 of the Water Code describes the board's jurisdiction and its broad authority and provides that the board at all times shall enforce on behalf of the state the erection, maintenance, and protection of such levees, embankments, and channel rectification as will in its best judgment best serve the interests of the state. And so it's quite broad, and that includes, as we've heard today, the board's policy, but also its authority to amend or rescind any policy that it previously adopted. Section 8702 specifically discusses removal or modification of encroachments of a previously issued permit. And that provides the board, following notice of an opportunity for a hearing, may order the removal or modification of an encroachment that was previously issued. Brian, if you could just, oh, you're fine on this slide, thank you. It gives a list of 8702, provides a list of factors that the board can consider when ordering the removal. One of those, 8702D, is provided here as an example, may order the removal or modification of a previously permitted encroachment if the encroachment, oh, can you go back, Ryan? I think we missed one, actually. Yeah, it's 87A02A2. The encroachment significantly impairs the functional capability of the levee to fulfill its particular intended role in the overall flood protection control plan. So as here, where we have a construction project to rectify seepage or stability issues, this would certainly be an appropriate factor to consider by the board. You can advance the slide now, Ryan. Thank you. It's important to note that if the board does order the removal or modification of a previously issued permit, that it is mandatory that the board either modify or revoke the previously issued permit. And in light of that, board staff is intending to initiate revocation action proceedings for those property owners that have not entered into the voluntary agreement incentive program with SAFECA. The board's regulations also allow for the for permit revocation. And that is found in section 28 of the board's regulation. And it allows for the board to revoke a previously issued permit for a variety of reasons. And I've just put one up here. The activity, which is A6, the activity permitted by the permit or approval is detrimental to the public health, safety, or welfare, or interferes with the successful execution, functioning, or operation of the flood control system feature. And then finally, it also in 28.8 refers back to any of the factors found in California Water Code section 8702. And that's all I have for the board this morning. We'll take questions at the conclusion of our presentation. Thank you.
And next up, Mr. President, we have Michael Wright, our Chief Engineer.
Thank you, Leslie. Good morning, President Egger, Vice President Dolan, and members of the board. I am Michael Wright, Chief Engineer for the board. And as Executive Officer Gallagher discussed earlier, at the focus of today's workshop is a 24-year-old policy approved by the Reclamation Board, now known as the Central Valley Flood Protection Board, by 7 board members, none of which who are current board members today. The 1996 plan, which is included in the staff report as attachment A, was developed over several public meetings and at least one public workshop. The 1996 plan was intended to be supplemental guidance to California Code of Regulations Title 23 for fences on levees. It was developed for the cross-levee fences, specifically within Maintenance Area 9 and located within the City of Sacramento city limits. At the June 1996 board meeting, board staff presented the plan and discussed the need for fences to protect private property from trespass, the need to not have unnecessary duplication of fences, and that no fence should interfere with local public access. The board also heard from landowners who described problems with trespass along the river, as well as representatives from the City of Sacramento who desired better coordination between the city and the board, as the city at that time was in the process of researching recreational easements in the pocket area along the Sacramento River. Ultimately, at the June 1996 board meeting, the plan was approved by the board. Next slide, please, Ryan. The 1996 plan is 3 pages long. The first page, excuse me, the first page covers new standards for cross-levee fences in Maintenance Area 9. These standards are as follows. Private cross fences for the control of trespass should be permitted on a case-by-case basis with the objective of minimizing the number of gates and cross fences so as not to adversely impact the operation and maintenance of the flood control project. The board should prevent any unnecessary duplication in the control of access to private lands or vehicular access. The board should coordinate with private property owners through the normal encroachment permit process to delineate and post the boundaries between private and public lands, and all gates with legal public access on both the upstream and downstream side shall be accessible to pedestrians, bicyclists, and Americans with disabilities. The second page covers additional items being considered as part of the plan, including consideration of removal of a number of fences, the need for acceptable signage standards to be developed with consideration of impact to operations and maintenance from new signs, posting of boundaries of public lands intended for public use, and the development of an ordinary high water mark elevation to define the waterside base elevation of cross levee fences. The third page covers previously identified actions that were not being considered as part of the discussion, and I'm not planning on going into those. The 1996 plan was short and fairly simple, provided supplemental guidance to the board's regulations, and ultimately allowed cross levee fences within Maintenance Area 9 on a case-by-case basis. And that's all I have for the plan. I will now turn the presentation over to Selva to discuss item number 8, encroachments within the footprint of the American River Common Features 2016 project. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. Good morning, all. My name is Selva Selvamohan. I'm the chief of the Sacramento Levee section board staff. Today, I'll be in my part of the presentation. I will be giving you an update on the encroachments with respect to the American River Common Features 2016 project. Ryan, next slide, please. So here's an overview of what I would cover in my presentation. I will just quickly go over the project phases, and then I will update you on the already removed encroachments in 2020. And then I will give you an update on the 2021, the next year construction, the encroachments, and then also I will touch on the remaining encroachments that need to be removed prior to the 2021 construction. Next slide, Ryan. So what you see in this slide is the different phases of the Sacramento seepage and stability contracts, that's being divided. So the project has been divided into 4 major contracts. Sacramento River East Levee Contract 1, that's under construction in this year, 2020. Contract 2 will go under construction next year, and then 3 will go in 2022, and then contract 4, the last contract, will go under construction in 2023, so they can complete the project by January 2024. Next slide, please. So what you see here in this figure, just to orient you, the city of Sacramento is in the north of this figure. The alignment shows the small pocket and the big pocket, and the yellow highlights and the green and blue highlights show the levee segments that will be under construction next year, 2021. This will be under contract 2. So as you can see, the portion in the lower part of the small pocket and also the length of levee, it will be under construction in the upper part of the big pocket. Next slide, Ryan. So in support of this construction, we identified the impacted levee encroachments in these all segments. We identified a total of 50 encroachments owned by 32 homeowners. And then Sacramento Area Flood Control Agency, SAFECA, initiated a voluntary removal program. And then what you see here on the left side with the green, 23 homeowners that have 22 stairs, 10 landscaping, 2 retaining wall, and 1 cross levee fence. They already signed the agreement with local agency SAFECA to remove their encroachments through the voluntary incentive program. What you see on the right-hand side under yellow highlighted section are the remaining encroachments that need to be addressed prior to the construction start in 2021. So that includes 8 stairs, 3 landscaping, 1 retaining wall, and 3 cross levee fences, a total of 15 encroachments owned by 9 homeowners. Next slide, please, Ryan. So those remaining encroachments that need to be addressed, I show in the previous slide, the yellow highlighted section are shown in this map. All these encroachments are in the upper part of the big pocket. What you see here in the circle with the black, oval-shaped circle are the cross levee fences. The first fence in the upstream end is at levee mile 2.76, and the next cross levee fence is at levee mile 3.13, and the third one is 3.29 levee mile, and the last one is at levee mile 3.66. What you notice here is one of the, levee mile is marked with orange highlight that shows the homeowner has recently agreed to remove the fence through Safeguard's voluntary removal program. Next slide, please, Ryan. So here in these, my next couple of slides, I will show you a couple of pictures of the cross-levee fences that exist in this segment. First, what you see here is the cross-levee fence at levee mile 2.75 at the upstream end of the construction zone. Next slide, Ryan. This is the second levee mile that I talked about, that homeowner recently agreed to remove it through the voluntary program. It's located at levee mile 3.13. The left-hand side photo shows the land side and water side component of the cross-levee fence, and the one on the right side shows the cross-levee fence and the gate on the crest of the levee. Next slide, Ryan. This is another cross-levee fence at levee mile 3.29. Again, what you see on the left side is land side and water side components of the fence, and then the gate and the fence you see on the right side on the crest of the levee. Next slide, Ryan. This is the last, cross-levee fence that need to be addressed prior to the construction. It's located at levee mile 3.66. Again, land side, water side view of the fence, and also the gate and the fence portion on the crest of the levee on the right side. Next slide, Ryan. So here are a couple of examples of stairs that need to be removed prior to the construction. What you see on the left side is at levee mile 2.93, wooden stairs and brick base. And then on the right side, you see concrete fence and handrails at levee mile 3.18. Next slide, Ryan. Here are some more pictures of stairs that need to be removed. These are located at levee mile 3.04. What you see here is concrete steps on the land side and also on the water side at the levee mile location. Next slide, Ryan. That's all my presentation. Thank you.
President, we are at the part of the agenda for public comment or comment from participation of other public agencies. I do believe we have a couple of folks with us from the city of Sacramento, perhaps, who wanted to.
Leslie?
Yes.
Well, I'd like to open it up to board comments or board questions at this
Certainly.
point.
Okay.
Before we open up the public comment, please. Okay, at this point, we're going to open up the presentation to board comments. Do we have any at this point? Any questions on any parts of the presentation? Do we see any?
I don't, Mr. President.
Okay.
Just from board members.
I'm sorry. We do have one from Mitra Imami.
So Bill's just looking for board members at this moment, Ryan.
Oh, I apologize.
Ryan, could we remove the item 9 from the agenda or the screen, please?
Just stop sharing your screen, Ryan.
Thank you. Okay, any questions from the board at this point on the presentation? That's
Board Chair Spurgeon.
Yes.
I just want to disclose that yesterday I had the opportunity to go out with staff to take a look at the project, and I just wanted to make sure that that was on the record.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, at this point, I think we'll unmute the public, and Leslie, if you could call any elected officials or agency representatives that you see.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I do believe that we have some representatives from the city of Sacramento that wanted to make a statement, and I believe they also have a slide, Ryan.
I also see that Jane Dolan, board member Dolan's hand is raised. I'm not sure if that's a request for a question.
Jane, do you have a question?
I had some trouble. Unmuting, but technologically getting trained here. I just wanted to share exactly what board member Griego said. I joined her on the tour with the project managers and engineers yesterday. It was pretty instructive.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that, Jane. Okay, let's proceed with the city of Sacramento at this point.
So I believe Jesse Gothen, are you on the line?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good afternoon, members of the Central Valley Flood Protection Board. Thank you for allowing us this opportunity to speak. That was a really informative presentation by all the professionals working on the levee improvements through this reach. We just wanted to give you some background for the board's benefit on our Sacramento River Parkway project effort. As you
Jesse, excuse me, what's your title with the city?
I apologize. My name is Jesse Gothen. I'm supervising engineer with the Engineering Services Public Works Department.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So we wanted to give you some background on our Sac River Parkway project. This is part of our City of Sacramento Bikeway Master Plan. There are many projects that we are working on along the waterfront. We have our Two Rivers Trail project. We have our I Street Bridge replacement project. We have our Broadway Bridge project that are all at various phases of the planning and delivery milestones. But this project here, I think, is most appropriate for today's discussion. And once the Corps and the Central Valley Flood Protection Board finishes the levee improvements, the city has been working on the bike trail. And the bike trail would extend roughly from where the paved section ends at Garshabin Park north to Zacharias Park. And so we are in the process of completing our environmental reviews. We are pursuing federal funds, much like several $100 million for the levee improvements. We are pursuing federal funds for bikeway improvements. And so we are positioning ourselves with this project to acquire those funds. And once we have them, we are looking to begin construction after the levee improvements are completed. So when we do so, of course, we would follow all the Uniform Act and the Code of Civil Procedures in terms of securing rights for the trail. And I want to mention too, because it's not often noted, but this project also envisions at the utility pump station to connect to Pocket Road and provide a crossing into the Pocket Canal system of bikeways. So Sacramento wants to be known for its bikeways. It's got the right topography for it, but there nevertheless are some boundaries, one of which is the river. But we want to be able to provide access for a continuous network connecting to Old Sacramento, connecting to the American River Bike Trail. There's several efforts, our Del Rio Trail, I've already mentioned Two Rivers. But anyway, this is one, and just for the board's benefit, just want to let you know what the scope is of it. So I think that concludes my comments.
Okay, thank you, Jesse. The city is pursuing on its own the separate acquisition of the property rights to allow this to happen. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So that would all be in the context of the Parkway project.
Okay, thank you. As you know, this is a meeting that relates to what happens after the construction and whether, in fact, the Central Valley Flood Protection Board is going to allow or revise the policy on the current policy on the permits for the fences going back up. And that's a public safety issue that we have authority to implement. But as I say, we want to cooperate as an ancillary item, not directly involved in our authority. As an ancillary item, we certainly want to cooperate with our partners at the city who've been very helpful in all of these efforts to make sure we have proper public safety as well as providing improved construction along the river. Thank you, Jesse.
Okay.
Mr.
Do we have any, Leslie?
We do. Eric Vank from the Delta Protection Commission would like to speak on behalf of the commission.
Oh, good morning, Eric.
Good morning, President Edgar and board members. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Eric Vank. I head up the staff at the Delta Protection Commission. We're the state of California agency that represents people in the Delta region. And we also have a statutory obligation to stitch together trails linking the San Francisco Bay Trail at the very bottom end of the Delta with the Sacramento River trails more at the top end of the Delta. I really appreciate the detailed staff presentation. I appreciate Mr. Gothen's presentation on behalf of the city of Sacramento. The commission has designated the trail I spoke of is called the Great California Delta Trail. We have designated segments of the trail extending to the Garcia Bend. The commission would be supportive of the city's efforts to continue the trail further south along the Sacramento River. And so I just wanted to make your board aware of our obligation to plan for this trail extending throughout the Delta region. It really starts with a robust network along the Sacramento River and extending southward. So we would welcome the city's actions. I would imagine that our commission would designate additional segments of trail as it extends further southward from Garcia Bend. And I appreciate the opportunity to address you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Next, Leslie, do you see any other agency representatives?
Mr. President, I understand that Supervisor Kennedy is with us, but I don't know if he wanted to make a statement or not. We would give him the opportunity at this moment.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And thank you, Mr. President. I'm here on a listening tour today.
Morning,
Thank you, Mr.
Patrick.
Supervisor.
Good to see you. Thank you for taking the time to be here.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. President, I do believe we heard earlier, although I don't have anything here, that the Department of Water Resources wanted to make a comment.
Yes, this is Mitra Amami. Can you hear me?
Oh, hi, Mitra.
Hi. So thank you. Good morning, President Edgar and members of the board. For the record, my name is Mitra Amami. I am the Chief of the Flood Maintenance Office for the Department of Water Resources. Thank you for this opportunity to address the board and make a statement on behalf of DWR related to fence encroachments in MA9. This is an important issue that can impact DWR's ability to operate and maintain this area flood protection system effectively. The Flood Maintenance Office, pursuant to California's Water Code sections 8361 and 12878, has the authority and responsibility on behalf of the state to ensure proper operation and maintenance of certain state plan of flood control levees and other features. DWR operates and maintains the MA9 levees consistent with the appropriate USAID's standard operation and maintenance manuals. With every permit application, the board requests the endorsement from the maintainer. In the case of any proposed request for endorsement associated with encroachment permits, and to properly comply with the federal operation maintenance requirements, the Flood Maintenance Office completes an item-by-item evaluation to determine if any proposed encroachment poses a hazard to the flood protection system and to identify and propose any additional permit conditions that may be required to minimize or mitigate potential impacts. Our evaluation includes review of any relevant engineering, environmental, and operation maintenance conditions that such an encroachment may pose to the flood risk reduction feature. Any encroachment permit application is unique, and we evaluate each application on its own merits. There are many permitted fence encroachments that exist in MA9 that increase the time and cost of maintenance for the Flood Maintenance Office. These types of encroachments increase the time required to apply herbicide around the fencing and gates and increase the time required for mowing. During high water and flood events, vegetation and debris get caught in the waterside slope fencing, and it is the Flood Maintenance Office responsibility to clear and remove this debris. Having to open and close gates during a high water event increases the state's response time and limits the state's ability to effectively perform emergency operations. As stated in the board staff report, I would like to reiterate that the Flood Maintenance Office, as the maintainer for MA9, cannot endorse any encroachment permits that restrict flood maintenance or flood conveyance. Thank you again for the opportunity to address the board.
Thank you very much, Mitra. I appreciate your comments very much.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Leslie?
Mr. President, I don't have anything here specifically from other public or state agencies, but I would ask if there's someone on the line I have missed to step forward now. Mr. President, I believe we don't have anything else from agencies. We do have some folks from some outside NGOs or other agencies that wanted to speak, and I don't know what order you'd like to go in for that.
Well, we'll take them with the public.
Okay.
Leslie. At this point, I'd like, before we open it up to the public, which will be fairly lengthy, I'd imagine, let's take a 15-minute break, please.
So back at 11:15, Mr. President?
Yes, that would be back at 11:15. Thank you. Okay, Ryan, I think we're ready to proceed. It's 11:15.
Okay.
If we can unmute the public and we'll just take them as they come.
Mr. President, we do have a list of folks who have requested to speak. If we could start with those.
Sure, that would be fine.
First on the list, we have Ann Stousball, Pocket Greenhaven resident and chair of the Mayor's Commission on Climate Change for Sacramento and West Sacramento. Ann, please. If you're on the phone, you need to press *6 to unmute yourself. Mr. President, would you like me to move down the list to the next while we wait for Ms. Stousball?
Might as well.
We have Jeff Hunt, a Pocket resident. Ryan, could you perhaps check and see if folks are having a hard time getting themselves off mute?
Yes, I can do that. I don't see Jeff Hunt as a name coming up on the participants list, but he may be calling in. If so, like Leslie mentioned, *6 to unmute yourself on the phone.
Okay, so do we have either Ann Stousball or Jeff Hunt with us? Next on the list is Ronald Fullwider, a Pocket resident.
I'm going to unmute you right now, Ronald. You are unmuted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. I would request a little more than 3 minutes because you guys did not read in our prepared statements. And then I have some personal stuff that wasn't prepared and mailed in. Who's supposed to read these? Dawn?
Yeah.
Okay, well, we have some stuff that Dawn's supposed to read. Is this?
No,
Hang on.
well, I don't know if Don's going to read those.
All right. If he doesn't read those, I'd like to be able to read the other ones in. All right. This was prepared for my wife, the ex-deputy director of the Department of Real Estate Appraisers for the state of California. Mr. Wright's 82620 letter to Cross Levee Fences permit holders states that pursuant to CCR Title 23, Waters Division 1, more specifically Section 6A, requires landowners to apply for a permit to replace or modify any encroachment on a project levee. We, the landowners, have no desire to replace or modify our encroachments, but understand the ARCF-16 project may necessitate the temporary partial removal of some encroachments and do not understand the need for new permits. Was the Army Corps of Engineers issued the required permits to modify our encroachments? If so, why didn't those permits include replacement of the encroachments? Even if the Corps didn't want to do the actual encroachment replacement, and that would seem the best way to meet permit requirements rather than forcing a multitude of individual homeowners to each overcome the multi-agency bureaucracy hurdles of obtaining a permit. If the Corps was not required to obtain permits per regulations to modify our encroachments, why are we required to obtain permits to replace what they remove? As requested in our September 27th, 2020 response, and if permits are required for homeowners who wish to return their private properties to the status quo upon completion of the ARCF-16 project, we request an expedited permit process that would process our applications as executive officer delegated permits, and that CVFPB waive 1, exhibit requirements 9A-D of the application, and 2, endorsement by the LMA, and 3, Army Corps review, and 4, submission of 3615A. I'll add in there that my wife finds the problem. She also gives you a solution to the problem that would expedite our being able to get the permits to get things replaced. Okay, under number 9, the maintaining of existing use of our private property is extremely important to us, with significant long-term consequences, not only to the value of our homes, but also to prevent liability, security, and privacy issues. We are aware of the agenda to put a bike trail on our private property in our backyards, and know that other bureaucratic entities will not endorse the replacement of the temporary and partial removal of our existing permitted encroachments after the ARCF-16 project construction activities are completed. As stated on page 56 of the Sacramento River Parkways Plan, parkway development and public access to the parkways must respect private property rights, and private gates across the levee have been constructed since these areas are viewed as property owners' backyards. There is no need to breach the private property rights and protection of the multitude homeowners between the existing cross-levee fences and gates, as the plan identifies an existing bypass trail that effectively bypasses private property stretches. At 71 years of age, the long-term drawn-out uncertainty of maintaining our private property rights and protection is entirely too stressful. We recognize that permitting authorities for levees lie solely with the board. If the board is not willing to provide written assurances that we can replace our existing permit cross-levee fences and gates immediately after construction is completed, we have adequate funding and are prepared to take whatever legal action necessary to prevent public access and public use to our private property and the properties of multiple impacted homeowners. Now, hopefully the other section that they sent in will be read by Don Murphy. Okay, I put together a couple little things here. I just want to say I'm a war veteran. I was homeless. The homeless. Oh, I wanted to mention that our property that we did have in Rancho Cordova, which my wife said was meaningless, was surrounded by homeless people who pooped on the property, loaded up garbage on our property. The government's solution was to cite us for the removal of the human waste and putting my life at risk by having to remove homeless people's garbage, which they considered valuable property, and weren't really excited about the fact that I had to remove it per city ordinances. So I'm throwing out their stuff, and then I'm getting threatened by homeless people to fulfill the city's requirement for me to clean up the property, which I thought the city should have handled. Having been homeless myself, I realized there's a lot of mental illness there and stuff that we had to deal with. I'm going to say this country put my life at risk and others in the ground, protecting land that I didn't own nor would ever live there. After lots of psychologists, job losses, divorces, and substance abuse, plus homelessness, which I had to overcome, and a lot of hard work, to finally get to a place at a relative peace and safety, hard work, luck, and the good Lord has put me in a place to own property that is on the river and peaceful. The objection to the fences has nothing to do with safety. It's the desire of some to have a bike trail in our backyards. We are avid bike riders, or at least were until we got real old. The pocket is crisscrossed with trails. When does the desire override safety of private landowners? Just the cloud of having a bike trail has reduced our property value by at least $250,000. Waterfront and view property is always worth more. Location, location, location. I will say both my wife and I are real estate brokers. And I also told you that she was in the appraisals. All those issues most likely relate to all of the owners who have riverfront property. I have a permit for the fence. It will be there when the levee repair is done. Okay, as you were going through your things, I've got no objection. We're one of the property owners that haven't signed anything, partially because whatever.
We never received an ERA. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we can't sign an ERA that we never received. We've gotten a 56-page proposal, and it's not about the money. I mean, personally, like I told my wife, I'd tear the fence down, the stairs out, let you guys do the levee repair. I have no objection to the protection of Sacramento. I've got a lot of real estate here of you guys going in and doing whatever has to happen to that levee. I'm all for it. I'd be willing to, I can't use my river area, whatever it takes to have a safe riverfront for the Sacramento City. I have no objection to that. My objection is being required to run through hoops, and the whole entire process of this is to take down those fences and open us up to public access. I will point out that the public already has an access. As anybody that knows water rights knows that it is public property to the average high water mark on a riverbank. So they want to put a damn bike trail down there, stick it down there on the other side of the levee along the river, or where the public already owns the property. But you don't need to spend a bunch of money on a bike trail. You already have them all the way around here. The issue of opening and closing gates, if necessary, we could simply put electric gate openers on the gates so they could go down the road and push a button, the gates would open for them. And during the flood seasons, these gates are all left open anyway. So it's not like they're stopping at every gate and unlocking them and slowing them down to do their work and stuff. So the gates aren't even a problem. I've never seen anybody down here clearing debris off the fence, ever. Okay, I had one other thing in here. Basically, from my viewpoint, this is private property. If you put bike riders and the public in my backyard, it's not a matter of, well, gee, somebody might sue you sooner or later. It is absolutely going to happen. The river is an attractive nuisance. People, bike riders, I know tons of bike riders, they break their shoulders. Somebody's dog runs out, they fall off on the American Bike Trail. It's happening all the time. So I know for a fact that if I've got the public access, the public use of my backyard, I will get sued by somebody in the public for millions of dollars. So it is more advantageous for me to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars coming after anybody that tries to keep those fences down than it is for me to wait to get sued by the public, which will happen. They always go after whoever has the most money. So basically, I have no objection to signing whatever to get the levee work done. I'm all for doing the levee work. Or I would just like to be able to get back there as soon as they're done, put the fences back up, my stairs back up. I'm handicapped. I need to be able to get access to the other part of my yard. That's the only thing I'm asking for. Or I'm not looking for huge dollar amounts. I mean, it's nice if they want to give me something. They need a easement on part of my property and all the other stuff. As far as the bike trail, I'm 71 years old. I'll be dead soon enough. When I'm dead, you can put your bike trail in. In the meantime, I don't need the problems in my backyard. My wife's all stressed out. She's got high blood pressure. Essentially, this needs to be solved, or next week, hey, we're hiring attorneys and I'm going to tie this stuff up all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States if I have to. I don't care. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Fullwider, and thank you for your service to the country. We absolutely appreciate that. Now, my understanding from what you said that Safeca has not provided to you with an opportunity to sign a voluntary agreement?
No, they have not.
Not the one you're talking about. They sent us a 56-page real estate agreement for buying the easement, and included in that
A temporary
construction easement. I mean,
It's totally different than what the ERA they have provided to the majority or all of the other property owners. We had a little unique situation because there's a small, teeny tiny sliver, 0.013 acres that they want, that was not included in their primary easement, and they wanted to purchase that from us. So supposedly that slowed the whole process down. But we never received an ERA for this construction work. And then, yeah.
Okay, I don't know. That's obviously we're interested in the public safety project and moving the construction project along and making sure that from now on the operation and maintenance of the levee itself into the future is efficient and effective. That's our main concern. With regard to the bike trail and the construction project and this voluntary agreement, if there's anybody from SAFCA listening into this presentation, I would advise them to at least contact the Fullwiders to make sure that they have the opportunity to look at your so-called voluntary agreement. Thank you. Thank you very.
Can I bring up something about the maintenance? My wife spent months putting in a ground cover and irrigation system. There was no need for maintaining anything on our property, and probably with most of the other private owners, there probably isn't. And they came along, even though we had a permit for ground cover, they came along and just hosed it all down with some kind of killer and destroyed months of her work on the levee, which, you know, just kind of sticking a thorn in our side too. So the concept that all of there's these government people that have all this maintenance getting slowed down by stairwells or fences, give me a break. You know, just isn't happening. And as soon as these fences come down, we're going to have, you know, well, it won't happen during the construction because you're going to have all the heavy equipment down there, but you're looking underneath all the bridges and overpasses in Sacramento. American Bike Trail is now covered with homeless people carrying machetes. I've had several of my friends, they won't even ride down the American Bike Trail anymore and they've approached rangers, and the rangers laugh at them and just, well, they all got machetes. So
okay,
don't
well,
need that. Not my old age. So thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Leslie, could we move on?
Mr. President, we have Jim Hoot, Friends of the Sacramento River Parkway.
Okay, Mr. Hoot.
Thank you, Mr. President. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Let me. You should also have video. In any event, Mr. President and board members, thanks for the opportunity to address you today. I am Jim Hout, Friends of the Sacramento River Parkway. I have submitted a letter on Friends' behalf, and I hope that you and the board members will take the opportunity to read the letter and take us up on our offer in the letter. In short, we have spent years documenting violations of encroachment permit, state statutes, and your own regulations. We don't believe residents along the river ever had a right to construct cross-levee fences and gates, particularly your predecessors improvidently granted encroachment permits. But any rights residents had, they have forfeited. But they forfeited those rights when they ignored their encroachment permit conditions and failed to obey laws and regulation. As I said in our letter, we will be happy to provide you the evidence to show these continuing violations. Please do not allow this disregard of law to continue. Please revoke and do not allow any further encroachment permits for cross-levee fences. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hope. Next, Leslie.
We have next Beth Coster, a Pocket resident.
Ms. Coster?
Again, if you're on the phone, to unmute yourself, it's *6.
If Ms. Coster is not on the line, we do have Ron Beals, who emailed me saying that he may have to get off the call soon, and he also had a comment.
Okay, Mr. Beals? Mr. Beals, if you're on the phone, *6.
I don't see him on the list of participants, Mr. President.
If I'm understanding the situation, William McClendon, is that Ron Beals with you? Or is that? Okay.
No, that is not.
Okay. Sorry for the confusion.
Mr. President, I don't have anyone else on the list I received. I would just call again if Ann Stausball, I know she did send in a written comment. If she is on the line.
I'm Val Toppenberg. Can I make a comment?
Yes.
Hi. My
Hi,
name
Val.
is. Hi. How are you today?
Good.
Hi. I'm joining the this meeting because I ride bicycles on the trail, and my home is at Hillview Way in Sacramento. I'm just making a short comment here, but I need to have access to the trail south on the rivers, and don't want to get fences on the trail. And I don't want to get on the street because I may get hit by a car. And that's what I'm worried about. Thank you, Mr. Edgar, and I appreciate your comments.
Thank you, Val. It's good to see you, sir.
Good to see you.
Next, Leslie, please.
So, Mr. President, if we have Beth Coster or Jeff Hunt.
I'm Jeff Hunt. I'm here.
Oh, hi, Jeff.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
That's good. Okay, so mine's short. I would just say that if you have to amend the 1996 plan and create a new standard when dealing with the permits, that just based upon the previous comments, if we can make the permit process more streamlined in dealing with one agency, because it seems like these people are quite frustrated. And then the 1996 plan does address control of trespass. If that could stay in the new standards and be one of the more more weighty criteria. And I know that in the staff notes they were talking about public versus private, and it sounds like it was recognized that in the public situation that recreational use would be part of the criteria or part of the new standards. But if the new standards could be very clear that in the private scenario that recreational use not be a criteria, that it not be something that's taken into consideration when dealing with the new permit, because it is private property, and then that would be contradictory to the importance of cross fencing to stop trespass. So I'm just looking for, if there has to be an amendment and there has to be new standards, that it'd be very clear the distinction between private and public, and recreational use not be a criteria for the private permit. And then I guess, yeah, they had touched on, people had kind of touched on one other comment. It says in the staff notes, removing fences does not automatically allow public access. I think that through the previous comments, I think it's obvious, and I've lived here for 18 years, that if that fence comes down, there will be public access. So that statement is not true. That if a person walks up to a fence, they turn around. If a person walks up to no fence, they continue on, and that's the homeless and the trash all the problems and the people looking for trouble. So if the fences do come down, there will be public access, and I'm just mentioning that because it's in the staff notes, and it shouldn't be any kind of a finding. And that's it. So thank you for listening.
Thank you. Is there anybody else at this point that wants to speak?
I see a Mark P. has his hand raised.
Yes, hi. I was just wanted to touch on the last speaker that mentioned that. I was reading the earlier plan, or the City of Sacramento plan, and heard the representative of the city talking about it as well, that there is a project in place, but that project does include a patrol function. And so my worry is once those fences do come down, they're not replaced, even though the board president said that, the board is serving as kind of like an ancillary function here, that those individuals or folks are going to start going onto the parkway. There's not going to be a private or a patrol function for public safety. So it seems to kind of be speeding up the process, actually, instead of waiting for the city to finalize the project, put all the pieces in place. I live in the Pocket Greenhaven area. I have 2 young daughters. My fence, obviously, for flood control purposes, is see-through. It's 6 feet high, 5 feet high. So that's always a concern of mine and countless of other neighbors of mine. And so I do hope that once construction ends, that those fences are put back in place, and then can wait for the appropriate timeline from the city and have everything in place for our own public safety.
Have you signed the voluntary agreement that Safeco's recommended?
I've received nothing.
Okay. And your name again? I'm sorry.
My name is Mark Portuando. I'm going to submit my comments as well to Ryan, so you can get my information.
That'd be great. Thank you very much. And I would just again remind Safeco that some of the property owners who have fences apparently have not been contacted, so we need to follow up on that.
I should say, though, when I say a fence, I just mean the fence to at the toe of the property to my backyard. I don't have a fence that comes up and over an encroachment.
Okay, if your fence is out of the jurisdiction of the board, and that is it within the 10 feet, I believe, of the toe of the levee?
No, it's not. I have a permit for it. It's not on the.
Okay.
It's not there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. No, my concern is mainly about just the public safety aspect, because once they do, once they do come down, folks are coming in.
I'm well aware of that issue. Thank you. Anybody else at this point?
I see a Patrick Robinson.
Mr. Robinson.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Long-time Pocket resident, 33 years, and I hear 2 issues here. One is access, and I granted that once you open it up, there'll be lots of access, but that tells you that a lot of people want access to that bike trail, a lot of us. So if we weigh, we're a Democrat society, if we weigh the majority, a huge majority here wants us to have access, and I think that that's the way we have to go. And I wish people, the very few people, 3 to 4 that are putting a line in the stand would say back and say, geez, let me have my neighbors be a little closer. And then safety is the other issue. And I have to say that, we in the Pocket area, we have green belts, we have the canal, we have I-5 underpass, overpass. We have plenty of areas where it is a bit dangerous. And why should only a small section of the Sacramento River, owned by just a handful of people, be different than the rest of us? Why are they special treatment and we don't? Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Have you submitted your comments in writing or not?
I have not.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else at this point?
trying to
No,
chime
we're
in. I
not,
don't.
Mr. Fullwider, you've had a long opportunity to deliver your comments. We're going to take other testimony at this point. Anybody else?
Yeah, I don't. This is Don Murphy.
Yeah. Hi, Don.
Oh, okay. I couldn't tell if I was still muted.
We can hear you.
Okay.
We can hear you.
Opportunity. I was going to comment with a prepared statement, but I think Mr. Fullwiler has pretty much covered that. But I want to echo the comments by Mr. Hunt about the recreational use of the levee, which he would propose that it exist in the amendment. I think the agencies would agree that levees are for flood control and they're not for recreational use. The issue of private property is at risk here. I happen to be a private property owner on the levee. I tried to get fence permits in January 2011. I was denied on the basis that my fence across the levee crown would impair the agencies, the Corps, DWR, MA9, from providing sufficient flood control and maintenance. I don't think the purpose of this meeting was to really go into the bike control issue, or the bikeway, but how would a bike trail not impair your ability to do flood control and maintenance? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else at this point?
There was a note in the chat about unmuting Ron Beals. Did you get that message, Ryan?
I didn't know which Ron they were referring to, so apologize about that.
Is Ron Beals on the line, and would you like to speak at this time?
I don't see Ron Beals as a name, maybe a phone number. I should also mention at this moment, I apologize, but to raise your hand if you're calling in, you will press *3, and that would display your hand in the chat.
Do we have anybody at this point, Les?
I don't see anything else, Mr. President, from my side.
I do see a couple now. I apologize, your number is redacted some. So if you're area code 916, of course, and then the last two digits are 5858. If you would like to speak, please unmute yourself.
And to unmute, it's *6.
Hi, I'm unmuted.
I apologize. This is okay. You may have to mute the computer that you're listening in from.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I can't hear you very well. We submitted comments. This is Mrs. Fullwider, that we asked the board to read, and since the decision was not to read them, I would like to read them so that they are part of the record. I won't elaborate. I will just read what we submitted that we had requested, if that's okay with you. And I want to say, you said there's not very many, someone referred to not very many participants. In consideration of the board and to avoid repetitive comments, we submitted a list of 61 property owners who support our requests with the documents that we sent in to read. So
yes, we have, Ms. Fullwider, we have that as part of the record. We don't, it is part of the record and we have read it. We don't need it read into the record at this time. Thank you.
But anyone listening to this meeting has not heard it. Is that not important?
No. What is important is that we compile a record, and that your submittal is part of that record.
This wouldn't take you that long to read.
It's really quite short.
Well, okay, go ahead and read it, please.
Okay. Article 6 of CCNR Title 23 states, upon adoption of a plan of flood control, an existing facility or use shall be allowed to continue as provided below. A permit or order shall be automatically issued for all conforming existing facilities and uses. This facility or use may not be changed, extended, or expanded without a new application to an approval by the board if the facility is not abandoned, lotted up. The property owners with existing permits impacted by the project are not asking to change, extend, or expand their existing use, only to redo what is temporarily undone for the project. Why is the board requiring new permits from each and every impacted homeowner? The board should recognize and honor existing permits impacted by the project and allow homeowners to simply redo what is undone without having to obtain a new permit. We welcome the board's suggestions to increase the efficiency of the permit process and will communicate those suggestions and build consensus with the impacted neighbors that we had on that list. The property of many homeowners between the permitted levee gates and fences impacted by the project goes to the river. It is the backyard of those homeowners. Removing the gates and fences would allow not only public access, but public use to the private property backyards of these homeowners. Would any of you want to have your backyard fencing removed, allowing public access and public use of your private property in your backyard? What about liability issues that no one has addressed? One might consider the river an attractive nuisance. This is not just about providing public access, it is allowing public use to privately owned property and the inherent risk of liability. Who will take responsibility or be held accountable when someone is injured in our backyard on our private property if the permitted gates and fences are not replaced? The permitted gates, fences on the levee provide private property protection. Removal of those barriers will compromise the rights of the private property owners and create liability issues. We encourage the board to maintain the existing master plan for MA9 adopted by the board in 1996, which allows cross-levee fences on parcels owned and feed by private parties. And I appreciate the opportunity to share that with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Just for the record, everyone needs to be understood that the board is trying to increase the maintenance and operation efficiency and effectiveness of the agency along the Sacramento River. Been neglected for a long time, as documented by not only the Department of Water Resources inspection reports, but also the Corps of Engineers. And we've taken it upon ourselves to increase as a priority of the board to increase the quality of the maintenance and responsibility, which includes looking at all of these permits and trying to modernize them and put things in them that are required, such as a time limit. These permits don't go on forever, and they shouldn't. No permit, in my view, should have an evergreen clause. But in any event, that's what we're trying to do. It's very difficult for a lot of people, but that's what we're facing at this point. Anybody else want to talk, please?
There is another phone number, area code 916, of course, last two digits 18. So if you can unmute yourself. Thank you.
Hi, I live in the Pocket area near the levee, and I just have a question about the cross levee fences. I don't know if you are the right person to ask that question, but my understanding was the cross levee fences were permitted in the past to a specific individual or individuals who at that time resided in those properties that abutted the levee.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but could you please state your name?
Oh, I'm sorry. My name's Nancy.
Thank you.
My question is, are the fences the permit for the fence is tied to the property or tied to the individual that requested the fence?
Okay, let me have our legal counsel comment on that. Jeet?
I'm sorry, Nancy, could you please state your last name for the record, please?
Last name is Turgeon, Turgeon.
Thank you. And on my end, you were breaking up a little bit. Could you just?
It's simply a question about the cross levee fence. Is it a permit that's tied to the property when it was requested, or was it tied to the individual who requested the fence?
The permits are issued to the property owners. They are in the name of the property owner who is in existence, who lived at the property or owned the property at the time the permit was issued.
So is the permit still valid once the house is sold to a new property owner?
When a new property owner takes possession of the property, they are required to submit an application to the board for a name change permit, and that gives the board an opportunity to review the permit to see if conditions need to be updated and whether the encroachment is still in conformance with board standards, and determine if any maintenance or modifications need to be made, or if the encroachment needs to come out.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, anybody else at this point? Ryan or Leslie, do we have any others wanting to speak?
I see nothing from the public.
I don't have anything here, Mr. President.
Okay. Okay, the next item on the agenda after the members of the public have spoken is the we'll bring this matter back to the board at this point. But before we do that, let's have a 15-minute break, please.
Mr. President, this is G. Before we do that, may I just address a couple of what I believe may be misconceptions by the public with respect to the board's authorities and the processes?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I just wanted to remind everyone, as Executive Officer Gallagher stated in her introduction, that regardless of what the board decides ultimately with regard to the policy, even if it rescinded its policy, that does not confer a right of public access. The board's easement is for flood control, not recreation, not public access. Secondly, the issue about permit revocation is a mandatory, it's a mandate on the board when it orders removal of an encroachment, which it must do in order for the construction to proceed. So that is why people are going to have to reapply for a permit. It is not a discretionary action by the board whether or not to revoke or modify those permits. It must revoke those permits if it's ordering the removal for the construction. And that's what I wanted to just make clear for everyone. And that is found in Water Code Section 8702. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Jeet. Any other questions from the board? Okay, let's take a 15-minute break, and then we're going to come back and we'll have a board discussion. Item 10 would be board discussion on the 1996 policy and direction to the staff for their future amendment, if any. Okay, we're on recess for 15 minutes.
I'm ready whenever you are, President Edgar.
Thank you, Ryan. Ladies and gentlemen, we're back in session at this point. I'd like to just start off by thanking everybody who participated in the public hearing, or not public hearing, but the public comment portion of this agenda. Your testimony was helpful and so on. For those of you who have not actually submitted written testimony to follow up on your oral testimony, we would certainly encourage you to do so. Any input at this point is helpful. Now, we're on item 10, and this is the board discussion on this policy and direction for the staff for the future amendment of the policy, if any. And the staff is requesting that they get a sense of the board as to where you are. And it's okay to say that you haven't made up your mind or want to wait for the report to come from the staff and more testimony and more time to think about it. That's okay if you haven't thought about it, and that's where you are at this point. Now, I'll start off at least with mine to give you a sense at least where I'm coming from, and it's based upon a lot of experience, not just at the board, but during my tenure as an employee of the city of Sacramento and ultimately the city manager. My comments, Leslie, for what they're worth and what I think we need to do is I don't know this title of this policy, master plan for MA9, doesn't make sense to me. From what I've seen of the so-called master plan, it's a policy. It's a policy of the board. It's certainly not a master plan. I don't understand who came up with that term, but it's not a master plan. So at the least, the name of the document ought to be changed to what it is, and it's a policy for, and it's really a kind of a pilot project, because ultimately we're running to, although this is just for maintenance area 9 that we're talking about, we will be doing modernization of our Title 23 regulations, and we need to think about how this pilot program is going to fit into that overall revision of the Title 23, which is our governing document that tells us how to operate and maintain the levees for the flood control system for the city, or for the Central Valley. So this is an important thing we're doing here. It's a bellwether for what we're going to do in the Title 23, but it's a clarification of this MA9 policy. Now, as I say, the utilities department at the city does supplement the maintenance staff from MA9 because they don't have the resources to do patrolling of all the levees in a high water event. So the city is always under its emergency response responsibility, have always started patrolling levees when the high water in the Sacramento River gets to a certain event, and I've been involved in that for a long time, and I absolutely agree with the chief of DWR's chief of maintenance, Mitra Mami's comments today. She, as far as I'm concerned, I agree completely with what her statements were, and that's kind of where I'm coming from. But so, what I would, from my point of view, I would think for those who want a new permit, they should fill out the application, and we'll review these on a case-by-case basis. And for a new policy, I'm inclined to consider approval on a case-by-case basis. Encroachments for stairs, landscaping, and even parallel see-through fences on the top of the slope. They meet all the design criteria of the Corps of Engineers, and that has to be made. They just can't be replaced as they currently exist, because I know a lot of those stairs and landscaping and so on does not meet the criteria of the Corps. But as long as they do, I'd be willing to accept it. I'm not, based upon my experience and the statement of DWR's chief of maintenance, I'm not going to support any cross levies, because I don't believe, based upon, as I say, my experience and her testimony, that they impede the efficient and effective control of the work we're trying to do during a high water event. So that's, from my point of view, that's where I am coming from. And if the kind of input that the staff is looking for, those are my comments. So I'd ask the other board members what their, if anything, what their thoughts are, and so that we can give the proper direction to the staff to come back with a report and recommendation that would be taken up formally at a board meeting. Do we have any, Jane?
I think I'm unmuted.
We can hear you.
All right.
And we can even see you.
Oh. Well, I was forced to do this, so here I am in video. Thank you for your comments, Mr. President, which I take very seriously because of your stupid calls. Because of your knowledge and experience of the wide region of the Sacramento area. So I'm going to respect what your comments are, but I also think that there's been sufficient change and new public policies, certainly the actions of this century. The legislature felt that it was appropriate and necessary to statutorily change from a division of DWR to an independent and newly named Central Valley Flood Protection Board with requirements. So I think any policies that are 20 plus years old should at least be reviewed based on those statutory obligations. And certainly in 2012, for the first time ever, there was Central Valley Flood Protection Plan. So the first look at the system-wide and goals and supporting goals. So any policies that predate by 20 plus years should be brought forward, reviewed, and changed or not, or revised, whatever. So I think it's appropriate, if not in fact necessary, to bring this 24-year-old policy up and look at how it compares or is different from change policies of this century, and consider, as you said, at least appropriately name it and consider revisions. I don't necessarily look forward to that. I think it's going to be tough. I've had that issue up in my area, a different portion of the Sacramento area, but that's why we're on this board, and we should modernize what our rules are.
Thank you, Jane. Anybody else? Mary Jane?
Yes, I feel like I'm going through deja vu right now, because in Yuba County, we certainly went through this through our reconstruction of the Levee District 784 area. And yes, most of it was agriculture, but farmers have no problem expressing their opinion when it comes to property rights, liability, safety, and so forth. And so, you know, with the new community of Plumas Lake, we also had to take those types of issues in consideration as it relates to some of the things that we talked about today. As I disclosed earlier, Board Member Dolan and myself went up there yesterday with the staff to take a look, and I could see that some of the items, the fencing, the stairs, were not in compliance with the permits. I'm a firm believer that when you use tax monies to make these improvements, which is to the tune of $1.8 billion of taxpayers' money, that there has to be an obligation as it relates to operation, maintenance and operation. These levees are critical, important to public safety. And it looks like to me that some of these levees in these private areas look like balconies, private balconies, you know, with the picnic tables, the barbecue, the recreational boats and kayaks and things like that. And you know what? If I lived there, I probably feel the same way too. But because there is public money invested in the reconstruction of these levees, I feel it's important on my part to look at the maintenance and operation of how we move forward. And the one thing you can be guaranteed is change. We're always going to be changing because science gets better and we understand what those levees are going to require in order to keep them maintained. For Yuba County, we had to assess ourselves more money in order to fit that maintenance in there. That was not an easy thing to do in a community that has been impacted by 2 levee failures in 11 years. And these kind of projects that we have above the Sacramento area puts Sacramento in more risk because, we were the weak link in the 80s, in the 90s. And it really, I think in some respects, kind of saved the downstream communities. But that's not the case any longer. As these communities upstream are making improvement, it puts the lower stream communities at risk. So my issue is maintenance and operation and the preservation of those levees. And so if there's any questions by staff to understand what my feelings are on this, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mary Jane. Those were excellent comments. And of course, you have a lot of experience in this area, so we appreciate that input. Any other board members want to express their opinions? Tim?
Thanks, Bill. I won't repeat the good things that were said previously by you and Jane and Mary Jane. Those are all very, I think, important insights to share. I, for the record, think, as most of you expressed, that something 25 years old, almost 25 years old, needs to be revisited for all the reasons you guys have stated. I'm in favor of doing that. And I also wanted to say that there's a lot of different players in these locations. And I think we got a good cross-section of that just today, listening to people's comments from the city, from DWR, from Eric and the Dog Protection Commission. I think we should do what we can to make it as simple as possible for the landowners to negotiate all those things. I know that it's frustrating sometimes when there's multiple organizations trying to work in the same footprint. And I think we're looking at changes, and I think we should do our best to make sure that's as simple as possible for people to navigate so that they get a consistent message from all of us, and we make it as simple as possible for them to be able to do that. I think the change probably is necessary, again, for the reasons that were stated, but I want to respect people's time and availability to navigate those changes with us. So I think I'd like to see us do what we can to make it as simple as possible for everybody.
Thanks, Tim. Those are good comments. And we're thinking about, I'm not sure whether we can construct a kind of a one-shop situation where these property owners can come to us and we can kind of do that ourselves. Leslie, you might want to think about that. I'm not exactly sure how we could do that, but Tim's right. We don't want to make this a nightmare where these property owners are having to chase all these different agencies around. That's for sure. Okay. Thank you. Any other, Mike? You're on mute, Mike.
Thanks, Bill. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thanks. So much like Tim said, I think there's been a lot of good comments, and I don't want to go through all of them, but I do want to say there's a lot of merit to everything that's been said. I really wanted to zero in a little bit on what Tim had just mentioned, and Mr. Fullwider, I think I'm saying that right, mentioned as well. An expedited process would show that acknowledgement that what we're doing is not easy for folks, where we're going to review a policy and the people that are affected by it directly with their property are, obviously very concerned. But if we can do an expedited process, make it as easy as possible to do a one-stop shop, like you said, Bill, I don't know how that works, but it would be great for our staff to find a way to coordinate with everybody to make it as simple as possible. I just think that's really important. And I do want to say that the cross levee fencing has been a concern for me, and it remains to be a concern. So I'm glad that we're reviewing the policy and looking at it. As it was said, $1.8 billion is a lot of money that went into the system. And I remember when Katrina hit, and then all of a sudden Katrina hit, they said, well, the odds are it won't happen again there. So now Sacramento's number one. And we did that. We put all that money in. We've done a lot of work, and we continue. And we just have to be vigilant all the time. That's really what we have to do. So I just want to share those thoughts. I really appreciate the comments, but something expedited that makes it easier and allows us to be as transparent as possible would be really helpful.
Thank you. Anybody else at this point? Joe? Are you raising your hand?
President Edgar, I'll get in line, but Joe can go first.
Joe?
Well, the one thing I really am not as totally up to speed on this as I need to be to make good comments, but it seems to me that the private property rights can be maintained by having fewer cross fences. If we had a fence at each access point, that should be enough. I don't know why we need multiple fences going across, between those public access points. So that's the only comment I have at this time.
Thank you, Joe. Brian?
Thank you. President Edgar, are you able to hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. If I've had little pop-ups all morning that my internet is unstable, so if I start to be glitchy, wave at me and I'll cycle the video off. But thank you, and also won't repeat things that I heard, but I also support revisiting the policy, and I think it is a policy, it's not a master plan, and would support further discussion with the staff and recommendations from them. The areas being, as others have said, ensuring that it's consistent with the current mission of the board and our planning efforts, as people have noted, the legislature and we have evolved in the years since this was passed. Also revisiting some of the premises in the last one in light of our actual experience with encroachments and their effect on operations of the system and public safety, as we heard from DWR, and then also, as you said, President Edgar, how it relates to our efforts in other parts of the system, and the precedent or interaction that it might have for implications for other areas. I also really want to thank the folks who came today for their comments. We heard quite a lot from different perspectives of what appear to me to be very legitimate issues for discussion in a policy questions around liability and safety in a number of ways, private property. And so I trust that as staff comes back to us, I would encourage them, and I know they would do this, to really look at those comments and think about those and come to us with an assessment so that it's clear how staff would respond to some of the issues that are raised and the balancing of interests that would go into the future policy, so that we know that we can have confidence that we're addressing the what I thought were some very good points raised here today.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, that completes kind of a sense of where the board is, and I'd simply ask Leslie, are those comments the kind of feedback you were looking for in developing your policy to come back to the board?
I think it's a very good start, Mr. President. I think some more specificity perhaps can be worked out as board members digest the information they heard today, and perhaps we'll have more comments for us. But we certainly have enough to, I think, do an amendment, at least to the title and the premise of this policy that exists.
Board President, can I just add something to what Brian said?
Of course.
Thank you. Brian made a very good point, and I just want to kind of elaborate on that. And that is that I heard today through the public testimony about, getting your attorney and lawyering up. And I'll tell you from experience that the best way to get good decision making is to keep the communication open. I've been through this process, and I tell you, there was some really tough decisions that we had to make, but it was the continuing effort of communicating with one another gave us the best solutions. And I mean, you can do whatever you want. I'm just putting it out there to offer that through good communications, we can find solutions. And I want to acknowledge that I understand your concerns as it relates to vagrants and homeless, and they mess up the levees too. So I'm not real happy about that happening. But I think through the discussion, we can try to solve those problems.
Thank you, everybody. Are there any other comments from the board or the staff at this point? Okay, Leslie, I think we're at item 11, which is adjournment, unless you have anything more you want to talk about.
I think we're good, Mr. President.
Okay. Members, we're on item 11, which is adjournment, and without objection, I would declare this workshop and discussion regarding the master plan for cross levee fences within maintenance area 9 and the encroachments within the footprint of the American River Common Features Project is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Bill.